Brigitte Bardot, a name that evokes beauty, glamour, and a life lived in the bright glare of cameras. But behind the silver screen sheen, there is a story rarely told, a story that doesn't sparkle with limelight, but trembles with human emotion, tangled loyalties, and a fortune that would change everything. What happens when the glitter of fame collides with the raw, unfiltered emotions of family? This is a story that begins in Paris, in the golden age of cinema, but stretches far beyond, into the quiet rooms of her heirs, and the choices that would haunt them for decades. In the early years, Brigitte was untouchable. She had that rare combination of charm, talent, and defiance that made the world stop and stare. Every step she took, every smile captured by a camera, seemed effortless, yet behind that elegance, few knew of the struggles she carried. She had enemies and friends, yes, but perhaps the most complicated relationships were the ones closest to her heart. Those bonds, fragile and human, would later collide with something she could never escape, her fortune. It was after her retirement from cinema, when the spotlight dimmed, that her legacy began to take a more complex shape. The world saw a glamorous icon, a woman who had defined an era. But inside her sprawling estate, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. Brigitte's wealth wasn't just money, it was the embodiment of decades of fame, art, and personal conviction. And as her life wound down, she made decisions that, though deliberate, would leave ripples that her family could not ignore. Her children and close relatives often spoke in hushed tones of the letters she left behind. Each page was carefully considered, almost surgical in its precision. Some inheritances were monetary, others symbolic rights to her name, access to archives, permission to speak publicly about her life. On the surface, it seemed generous, but the reality was far more complicated. As her will was read aloud, eyes filled with tears, not just because of loss, but because of revelations that nobody had anticipated. The first shock came with her instructions about how her wealth should be used. Brigitte was clear, she wanted a part of it devoted entirely to causes she had championed in life, particularly animal rights. Those who expected an even distribution among family members were blindsided. Arguments erupted quietly, simmering beneath polite nods in the grand halls of her estate. The money, once seen as a unifying legacy, became a source of division. How much of wealth should one sacrifice for ideals, and how much belongs to blood ties? That question haunted every family gathering, every whisper exchanged behind closed doors. There were also secrets, fragments of Brigitte's life she had never revealed publicly. Letters surfaced, filled with raw emotion, longing, and regrets that the world had never witnessed. In one, she confessed fears of being misunderstood, of being loved for an image rather than for herself. In another, she wrote about the loneliness of fame, how adoration from millions could never replace the warmth of genuine connection. Her family read these letters with trembling hands, realizing that the woman who had dazzled the world had also quietly suffered in ways they were only beginning to comprehend. And then, the twist no one could have predicted. The fortune, immense as it was, could not heal old wounds. Instead, it magnified them. Relatives who had barely spoken in years found themselves at odds over small details. Discussions about the estate turned into confrontations about past grievances. Did Brigitte foresee this tension? Was it part of her design, or simply the consequence of a lifetime lived so publicly? Each family member wrestled with guilt, with desire, with love and resentment all at once. Yet, amid the turmoil, a strange beauty emerged. The fortune, in its complexity, forced conversations that might never have happened. It forced her family to confront questions they had avoided. What do we truly value in one another? Is legacy measured in wealth, or in the intangible lessons left behind? Could love survive even in the shadow of inheritance? These questions hung in the air, unanswered but profoundly felt, echoing in the silent corridors of her estate. As the months turned into years, some relationships healed, others remained fragile, permanently altered by the gravity of Brigitte's decisions. And yet, the story of her fortune became more than money. It became a mirror, reflecting the human heart in all its contradictions, devotion and rivalry, admiration and resentment, grief and hope. Brigitte Bardot, the icon, the legend, had left something far more enduring than wealth, a profound lesson in empathy, in understanding, and in the quiet power of intention. And perhaps the greatest question lingers still: if a fortune can both unite and divide, what truly matters in the end? Was it Brigitte's desire to protect her ideals, or was it a final challenge to her family to grow beyond the shadows of her fame? The answer remains elusive, as all great legacies do, leaving her family and the world to wonder. One thing is certain: Brigitte Bardot's life, and the fortune she left behind, tells us more about human nature than any headline ever could. Her story is not just about wealth, it is about the choices we make, the love we show, and the ways in which even those we think we know can surprise us until the very end. It is a reminder that behind every glittering life lies the quiet, complex heartbeat of humanity, waiting to be understood. And as her family continues to navigate the echoes of her decisions, one truth shines brighter than any fortune: some legacies are measured not in gold, but in the courage to live and leave behind a life unapologetically your own.